Behind every brand, every movement, every leader, every transformation, there's a story. And intertwined in these stories is a message. And this podcast is for you, the next gen leader, coach, entrepreneur, and influencer. My name is Travis Brady, and I'm a branding mentor and sales story strategist. I hope you see me more of a guide than a host as I share the stories behind the brands, so you can take these stories, experiences, principles, and teachings and use them to share your story with the world. What is up? Welcome to the story behind the brand. I got a big deal here today. I got Colin Martin. He is the creator, CEO of GW Funding Solutions. He's a funding consultant. He helps big projects fund for real estate, commercial. He helps package up the deals. He's been doing it for 8 years. Lives in San Diego. Fill in the gaps, Colin. Tell the listeners a little bit more about yourself.
Yeah, hey, how's it going, guys? Colin Martin here. Working on my brand itself I go by Colin the Bank. Like the bank is calling. Be ready to answer the phone when it calls, right? Just kind of coming from the finance background. I'm kind of putting together my own path. I started in the structured settlement business, buying cash flows of payments. Then I transitioned into the residential commercial lending space. Just helping people reach their dreams. They want to, whether it's home ownership, whether it's fix and flips, whether it's building a hotel, things along those lines. So it's kind of expanded from there. Just kind of coming from learning the back end of the money business, and getting an idea of how to be the bank and not the landlord. So there's a lot of different avenues where, it all kind of intertwines and overlaps, and I've been blessed to get together with you, Travis, and work on my brand myself, because I've worked primarily in a referral basis, not really just overthinking getting in front of the camera,
Yeah.
or making content and this and that, but same conversations that we have all day, every day. And might as well share those with people that, are looking for those answers anyways.
Yeah, absolutely. You're going through the phase of what I would refer to as maybe this branding isn't so stupid and maybe there's some value in putting myself out. I
Absolutely.
think we all go through those. We all go through that phase, but that's really cool to see. Colin spoke at Brand X, was on our breakout brand panel. That was one of your first time speakings. How was it?
It was good. It was a great time. It was funny, behind before we went on stage, you asked me, so how many speaking engagements have you done? And I was like, well, this is the first one. We're going to figure it out. But
Nice.
it was good. I just noticed myself, I think where I did really well was just being genuine and authentic. I was like, hey, like, I don't really know what I'm doing up here. I'm going to speak from the heart, kind of make a fool of myself maybe, or we'll just come out and share what I'm doing, share who I am, and share how I can help. But it was a blast.
Nice, man. Nice. Yeah,
Mhm.
I love panels. It creates good conversation. I thought you did really well up there for your first time. I think it's a long time coming. I think you should have been on stage years ago. My business partner Dom just talks so highly of Colin and who he is as a person and character and integrity. What got you into this business though? And yeah, what were you doing prior to this?
Yeah, like I said, I grew up in the construction world. My dad was a general contractor. He has four brothers. Three of them are all GCs. So I kind of grew up in that, if you want lunch money, you want to go out with some friends. Yeah, I'll give you some money, but you better get your ass in the backyard, right?
Nice.
And over the years, like, it taught me, discipline and work ethic, and just valuing the dollar,
Hmm.
and that it's not just going to come, And then I got into the structured settlement world. That industry is a very unappealing industry. It's just a shady industry, and for me, it's not about just doing a deal just to do a deal, right? It's doing good business and lasting business, right?
Hmm.
Like I said on stage, I never want to do one deal with somebody. If I do my job right, then you're not going to go anywhere else,
Yeah.
right? And I have to earn that business, But then over time, wanting to help, maybe flippers become developers, and being able to help people take that next step and just add value, right? I
Hmm.
learned it from a young age. I was in network marketing, and personal development and just feeding my mind, um, and just being a vessel, and just trying to help as many people as possible, and then just genuinely be a good person, right?
Yeah.
If it's funny, like, a smile can change somebody's day. Something as simple as just smiling at them and saying hello, right?
Mhm.
So I try to take that kind of mentality into everything I do, with my day-to-day business, with, you know, uh, my faith, with family, with friends, and just give. Always give before you ask to receive.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I have a saying in business that we really try to indoctrinate into our clients is, people aren't going to pay you based upon what you're going to give them. They're going to pay you based upon what you've already given them. It's a
Hmm.
lot of faith to trust someone
Just,
on what they're going to give you on the back end. So yeah, anytime you could be a go giver and give in advance, I think it goes a long ways. And I think what I've learned, and I think I learned this earlier on in my business, your whole family were entrepreneurs, it sounds like.
for the most part, my dad was. A lot of my uncles, they have their own construction businesses, or, you know, bathroom, kitchen remodel, things like that. My
Yeah.
mom worked for Kaiser for a very long time,
Okay.
and she was about 9 months before reaching her 20 years to be able to retire. And they hired somebody younger and cheaper and let her go. She had some workers' comp issues, and that from a young age just showed me, like, man, these companies, these corporations, they don't care about you.
Yeah, it's
You're
true.
you're a number.
Yeah.
You're just somebody pushing paper. You
Yeah.
know, and so I just learned, hey, if you could push paper in a different way, and set yourself up, there's you got to do it yourself. And if you can help enough people get what they want, that saying, help enough
Hmm.
people get what they want, you're going to eventually get what you want, right? And
Hmm.
just keep going.
Yeah, there's a human evolutionary need called certainty. Tony Robbins
Hmm.
talks about it. Everyone wants certainty, and it's funny how entrepreneurs and people who work for someone else, they get certainty in a different way. Like people who go to work for someone, they're like, I want the certain check, but they're not certain that they'll always have a job. And then for us, it's not always certain you got a check, but it's always certain that you'll have to have a job. It's like opposite
Yeah,
contrasts,
yeah,
of
absolutely.
the situation. But yeah, I didn't grow up with like entrepreneur parents or anyone around me. So it was like really having to figure out at a young age. And I think that's one thing I figured out earlier is you have to give in advance. You have to give a lot. And if
Yeah,
you can do that and you can do that with a good heart and not expectation of receiving, man, it really goes a long way through the process. What do you think?
absolutely.
What do you think separates you in your business? You've been very successful at it. What do you think separates you from other people? What do you feel like are some of the other mistakes that people make in your field that that holds them back from reaching that level of success?
I would just say, there's a lot of people, whether it's like a commission breath or they're not focused on the relationship, they're just focused on the deal. Right.
Mhm.
There's been many times where I've walked or talked clients out of doing a deal because when you pencil it out, it doesn't make sense. And I never want to put somebody in a position that might hurt them, right, or that's
Mhm.
not going to benefit them. And then I think that genuine aspect. A lot of people, a lot of my clients, I just have conversations with them. They'll just call me, as a friend,
Mhm.
and just kind of having that same kind of approach to business as I do to life with friends and family and whatever the case may be.
Yeah.
And then, I'm getting new into this whole social media thing. I have it, I don't really use it much, but now I'm just realizing, hey, like with you, you helping people kind of the same way that I'm saying, but with their branding and getting their reach out there. What kind of got you into that space, if you don't mind me asking?
Yeah, going back to the first of a call, I went through the first stage in business. I was like, man, if you're good at what you do, you're gonna get paid for it, right?
Hmm.
People are gonna find out. And I think there is some truth to that. But I think as I started to go along in my journey, I saw these other people that were getting more clients. They're making more money, and I'm like over here with these degrees and all these certifications and all this experience, and I was like, shit, why am I struggling? And these guys are
Hmm.
doing good. And it's just like the way that they were putting themselves out there. I was
Hmm.
watching Tim Tebow's personal trainer train him one day on TV. I was like, what the fuck is he doing with him? No wonder that guy can't throw a football very well. He's like so robotic. He's like a freaking
Yeah.
muscle out there trying to throw it. And
Hmm.
so, yeah. And I was like, man, maybe I'm missing something in this branding thing. And then for the people that, out there that still have that apprehension, about branding, what I tell them is everyone's top way of getting clients is through referral. And if the only reason
Hmm.
of putting yourself out there on social media is just saying staying front of mind with the people you're already connected to, then that's all the reason that's important all by itself. And so the truth is, we do form first opinions about someone, and the way you enter someone's life is tend to where you stay. I tell the story
Hmm.
about this guy that spoke last year at Brand X. He's like multi millionaire, has like islands in other countries, and he was a bum on the street at one point in time. And he
Hmm.
says there's some people that he met when he was a bum on the street that still see him as a bum on the street. They don't listen to him. They're not open for what he has to
Hmm.
say because that's how he entered him in his life. And so how you are perceived from people right from the beginning is everything. So you would rather be respected because the truth of it is, it's not what you're saying is true or not. It's do people trust what you're saying or not? So we
Hmm.
just live in this age where, they say the word authentic was the word of 2023. I don't know if you heard that because
No, I didn't.
AI was coming out. It's like what's real, what's not real,
Yeah.
so authentic became the word. And so a big part of your brand is, just being who you are, being willing to be vulnerable and
Hmm.
the things you don't know. And so yeah, I believe that there's a whole art to how you showcase it. And really, I think it's just
Hmm.
being able to showcase, more of who you are. I got a text message from a client the other day, and she just said, I love your fun, playful side that you put out. I love we talk about the
Hmm.
four archetypes: lover, magician, warrior, and king. And she said, I love your lover is what she said. And so I was like, okay, thank you for that. Thank you for that feedback.
Hmm.
Sometimes putting yourself out there is, just funny videos. Dom, our friend, is amazing at dance. So I was like, dude, I know you might, despise the dancers on social media, but the truth is they get attention. So what does it fucking matter? We're here to win in business.
Yeah.
So getting attention is getting attention. Why does it matter how you get attention as long as that's true to you? So you've been starting to put yourself out there. What are
Absolutely.
some of the things that you've kind of been trying to get through yourself and putting yourself out? Or like, what are some of the mindset shifts you feel like you've had to make?
I think I've had to make that shift about, not taking it too seriously. All right. A lot of times, I can't turn my brain off, right? It's easier said than done, and I'm always thinking about business and whatnot. So it's like, setting those boundaries of times and, kind of having that well-rounded life, where it's not just career focused, it's not just business focused. So even when it comes to content, I think some of that goofy content, we're on social media for fun. A lot of people, it's an outlet, an
Mhm.
escape, but if you can kind of bring something together, and have some fun with it, or it's not too serious, because especially in the money world, it's kind of a boring place, for a lot of
Yeah.
people,
Yeah.
so it's like, how do you make that a little bit more interesting, and especially when I'm working with a lot of these funds, it's funny because some of them, just kind of dicks, right? They're like, "Oh, I got all this money, so you do what I say," and it's just funny to see how a lot of them don't market, because they can't market it, right?
Hmm.
How do you market that if it's just blah blah blah, like just monotone, So trying to bring in the fun, I'm thinking about starting a boat podcast where it's like a boat talk,
Hmm.
similar to this, just a conversation, but we go outside on the boat and we hang out and we cruise around and have fun, talk about business, talk about deals, talk about life, talk about family,
Hmm.
whether it's, I just joined a Bible study as well. So there's a lot of different things that just kind of bring people together. It
Hmm.
doesn't always have to be about business. That's one thing I've been learning from Dom, right? It's not like, oh, you have three different businesses. It's, you are just you,
Hmm.
right? And these are the things that you do. It's just waking up and living. Not, I don't ever want to have to wake up and be like, oh, I have to go to work. Damn it. I just this is what I do. This is who I am. And
Yeah.
I can't turn it off. And I don't want to. I just want to do it the right way. You know what I mean?
Yeah, you seem like a hardcore worker warrior, dude. Is that something you learned from your family? Like how do you like teach people to be like you?
I don't think you I don't think you can. I don't think you should. Right? I think everybody has their own. Like, I've it in the past. I've tried to like push, push, push. Like, let's go, motivate. I ran in sales teams and whatnot, and not everybody is going to work as hard as you. Like for your goals, nobody's going to work harder than you for your own goals, right?
Hmm.
And their goals, everybody has a different ideology of what success is, right? And it's all true to that person,
Yep.
right? Some people
Yep.
want to grow, want to be there career wise and financially and take care of their family. Some people just, want to be able to live life happy and spend time with their family, right?
Hmm.
I'm a believer in, with my ambition and whatnot, but I think you've noticed those people around you that are similar minded, and those are
Hmm.
the people that you hustle and grind with,
Yeah.
right? And you keep your circle small. I'm sure everybody in this world has been screwed over by a business deal or a business partner or whatever the case may be in life, and
Hmm.
that's just life. You
Hmm.
know, I remember at one point I got screwed over, and it took me out of my zone. Where like I put walls up. And for
Hmm.
a while, I was just like not open, but I'm naturally a people person, right? I naturally love meeting people. I remember in elementary school, I talked so much that they would put me next to kids that spoke Spanish, and we would be talking about something, right? But
So
for a
now you're
while,
speaking Spanish, right?
exactly right. But at that point, it kind of screwed with me mentally, and then I had to check myself, look myself in the mirror, and it's just like, hey, man, if somebody controls your mind, they become your master, you know, and get back to being true to you. And I think that's the biggest thing right there. Sorry, I went on a
Yeah.
tangent. I go on tangents sometimes.
Yeah, no, you're good. We're just BSing here. So yeah, I love
Yeah.
it. We were having a conversation at the after party after Brand X, and I think I was sharing a concept that, yeah, we've all been hurt, we've all felt like we
Hmm.
got, taken advantage in of some way, in some sort, in different aspects. And then we close off, but sometimes we don't realize we're closing off to the people that would never hurt us and don't have the intention to hurt us. So it's
Hmm.
like, don't bleed on the people that didn't cut you, right? And
Yeah, absolutely.
when I went through my divorce, I had some close men close to me that I thought were good men, but they couldn't be honest with me because they couldn't even be honest with themselves.
Hmm.
And I closed I closed myself off a little bit, not realizing that, I can't close my off to the men that are purpose driven visionaries,
Hmm.
wanting to go to the next level. I started looking at, okay, what's the pattern here? And the pattern is, well, they don't have a bigger purpose. They're working for someone else. All they really care about is, surface level stuff, just like, not that
Yeah.
I don't love football and watching sports. I love sports, but that's their entire life. Their entire life revolves around, these
Yeah.
small things. And so I think it's just seeing the patterns and not, like I was saying, just not bleeding on the person that didn't cut you. But that's easier said than done.
Yeah,
It's
it is.
which is
Absolutely.
everything. Everything's easier said than done, right?
Hmm. Yeah.
But going back to you for a second, Colin the Bank, where did Colin the Bank first come from?
We were just like thinking, because I was working with a lot of mortgage notes, kind of the back end of the money business, right? And teaching people how, being the bank over the landlord, right? We can get that passive cash flow from a mortgage note, right? And, I was just, with my name being Colin, kind of the perfect play on words where, because I have all the different avenues within the finance space, right? And I can kind of look at a deal and dictate where it should be, right? Not every deal needs to be a note or a flip or an asset that you're buying, right? Every deal is a little bit different. Don't fit the square peg into the round hole, so to
Hmm.
speak, right?
Yeah.
But for me, like on the notes, with all these different private equity funds and hedge funds that I work with in family offices, where I can kind of dictate where it goes. And then, at one point, I just started when I would go to networking events and whatnot, and they're like, "Oh, what do you do?" I was like, "Oh, I'm the bank." All right. And that would get a different response than
Uh,
when they've met 15 loan brokers, right? Oh, yeah, I said I do loans, right?
yeah.
They've met
Okay.
15 of those. So how can you differentiate yourself? And then with my name, Colin, just pick up the phone. from Colin the Bank, and
Ah, I love it.
that would get them asking questions, and I would kind of go from there. But just worked as a play on words that I just kind of ran with.
Yeah, man, I love that. Yeah, anytime you can stand out, being unique is better than being better.
Hmm.
I was talking to
Absolutely.
a guy the other day and they want to grow this online streaming business. I was like, listen, what you got to understand is you gaming for 4 hours and not putting out any posts or any videos or anything is kind of ridiculous. If I'm being
Yeah.
super honest,
Hmm.
when you say you're trying to be the best gamer, when in reality, the best gamer isn't going to make money, the person who has the biggest brand is going to be able to
Hmm.
make money. And it's about, yeah, being unique. And so, yeah, I love that. That's awesome. There's a lot of ways to make money in real estate.
Hmm.
Obviously, you chose your path.
Hmm.
If someone was trying to get into real estate, what would be some of the first things, first questions you ask them, or which direction would you point them in? Where do you feel like's the most opportunity come up here in the next couple of years?
There's a lot of opportunity out there, and there always will be. All right. It was mind blowing to me when I went out to Arizona. Because down here in San Diego, I do a lot of development. All right.
Hmm.
It's rare to see lots down here in San Diego. All right.
Hmm.
Going to Arizona, there's lots everywhere.
I
Right.
know it's crazy. It's
And then
crazy.
you see like wholesalers, like everybody's a wholesaler these days. So I would try to divert away, and not, picking one avenue. Learning the money business is going to be because money needs to be there for every deal, no matter what.
Hmm. Hmm.
Right. So if you understand that, you have the creativity to structure deals. So one of the first questions I would ask is, what are you looking to do? Uh, are you just in real estate because people in real estate make a lot of money? Because in reality, that's not true. The average real estate agent makes about 40 grand a year, right? The top
Wow.
1%, absolutely. But that takes work, that takes branding, that takes everything else that comes along with it,
Yeah.
right? So do you want to own properties? Do you want to be the landlord? Or are you just looking for passive cash flow? Look for passive cash flow. Hey, look at notes. For me, I wanted to learn the back end of the money business because my dad was a contractor. And instead of having to go find the deals and use his own money, I was like, how can I learn to leverage other people's money to help these deals happen easier?
Hmm.
You know, and that just took me down a spiral of, the money business. I'm kind of looking at the back end and all these different kinds of deals, whether it's, even helping people fund acquiring businesses, right?
Hmm.
There's a lot of different ways that you can be in the money business and in the real estate business. And I think diversifying at the same time. I wouldn't say, I know I've mentioned notes a couple times and fix and
Hmm.
flips and whatnot. I don't think anybody should just have one avenue, right? You should have various different avenues within the real estate space, because that's one of the best ways to grow your wealth, you know. But then learning how
So
to use the money. That's the
yeah,
biggest thing.
yeah. So you're the bank. What else are you doing in real estate personally?
We're actually building a hotel, a small little hotel. It's like 25 units of an Oceanside.
Okay.
It's right on South Pacific, across the street from the beach. So we're building that up. Just kind of growing up. We helped our parents with some Airbnb units. Kind of go ahead and retire my parents.
Hmm.
And they're killing it. Obviously Airbnb. It's very inflated. You know, there's a lot of people in the game.
Yeah.
So I try to do a couple different things. Because networking is a big thing. I get wholesale deals sent to me. Um, really just trying to do a bunch of deals and help people do their deals.
Yeah.
I really like helping people package the deal up and find that financing for them or that funding.
Did I introduce you to Damon at the event? Did you ever meet him?
I don't know.
I need to get you connected with him. Anyways, he's a client.
Mhm.
He spoke and he does storage units all over the U.S. He kind of found
Mhm.
this niche. He has a crazy story. This dude got arrested like 33 times.
Well,
And I was like, dude, how do you get arrested 33 times and not still be in jail? And he's like, well, you just gotta stay patient and stay calm and hope that they screw up.
yeah.
Because then they throw out all the evidence. I'll have to get him on the podcast. Really great dude. But
Mhm.
anyways, I was just,
I want to call myself a rookie in real estate, but
Mhm.
yeah, I don't know, maybe above rookie. I don't know how to classify myself, in that I've kind of always done it passively, but he has me convinced to sell one of my houses up in Utah. I have about 500,000 in equity in it and
Mhm.
put it into buying some land and doing storage units. He said it can run automatically, with a system and everything like that. Have you been a part of any storage type stuff? What's your thoughts on all that
Yeah,
stuff?
yeah, absolutely. When I worked at one of the banks before I kind of, went off as a free agent, I guess you can say, one of my bosses, the president of the company, their family started a storage unit or like was one of the big pioneers early on, and they owned, over 250 storage units. And for me, I don't know if real estate's for everybody or depends on the asset class, right? There's many different asset classes in real estate,
Hmm.
right? Even hey, if you were able to buy a parking structure downtown, right, where there's no maintenance, you have one employee, and if the goal is just passive income,
Hmm.
you can even go in and buy somebody's existing business, right? There's a lot of different ways to make passive income. I
Hmm.
think the old school way is like, oh yeah, you just have to buy a bunch of doors and buy a bunch of doors, and then you're running around like a chicken with your head cut off anytime something goes wrong,
Hmm.
and that might not be for you. It might be for you.
Hmm.
Everybody's a little bit different. For me, I want reoccurring passive cash flow,
Hmm.
right? So storage units, something that's the lowest maintenance possible, because I don't want that call at 2 o'clock in the morning. Oh shit, it's flooding over here. Can you get here now?
Yeah.
I don't want that headache.
Yeah, no, I sold a house in Utah when I moved down to Arizona. When they built it, they didn't slope the backyard away from the house. And so the backyard had this gradual. And so every time it really ran, dude, my basement flooded. I swear to God, it flooded like 10 times. And
Yeah.
then after
Same thing in
about
my parents'
eight,
house on the Airbnb.
yeah. Oh shit, man. So I end up selling it. I put these pumps in the water wells. But I just didn't want the headache, man. I also my first house that I got, it was in a bad area in Utah, and it's in the process of selling it, people were breaking into it. It got used as a whorehouse. There were numbers above the rooms. Someone was someone was doing something downstairs and these random people walked into the room, pulled up some carpet and grabbed some stuff out of the carpet and walked out. I was like, holy shit, dude. I still have nightmares about that house, bro. I kid you not. And
Yeah, I
everyone's like,
bet.
you should, and everyone's like, well, it's getting good cash flow. You're getting $1,000 a month. I was like, dude, I don't fucking care, bro. It's like
Yeah.
the
What's
headache
more
from,
valuable, your peace
yeah.
or a little bit of money? you
Yeah,
know?
no, it's so true, at what
Mhm.
level too, right? But anyways, back to Damien, I was talking to him, I was like, well, the problem I think I would run into is, in the meanwhile of floating some of these payments for the first year while I'm getting the storage units, I don't know what I'd do there. And he's like, that's no problem. You just find someone else that you could bring in on the deal and give them maybe 5-10% equity, and then they'll loan and fill in the difference. And so I'm just
Mhm.
like, wow, it's so interesting. One of the things I think I've realized over the years is and I think you could speak to this very well, and I want to get your
Mhm.
thoughts, and maybe you can articulate it better than I can. But it seems to
Mhm.
be the best way to like really make money is how you structure the deal and how you finance it, and I think I didn't really understand the concept. People get afraid of
Mhm.
the big numbers, but they don't realize you don't have to worry about the big numbers. You just have to worry about how you structure the loan and the financing.
Mhm.
So I don't know if you could speak to that principle
Yeah,
or
absolutely.
yeah.
Absolutely. I had a mentor of mine. He said, it's easier to do the $100 million deal than the $100,000 deal. And I was like, what? But it's so true because a lot of those people that are doing the $100,000 deals, they don't have anything organized. They don't, the people that are doing those bigger deals, this usually isn't their first deal, right?
Hmm.
They've gone through it before, over and over again.
Hmm.
And my cousin he flipped a bunch of properties here in San Diego, and now he's kind of a nomad, just living. I don't even know where he's at right now. But he told me at a young age, he's like, man, just go find the money. And I was like, from who? I don't know anybody that has $300,000. Like, what are you talking about? And but in reality, now moving forward, there's if the deal makes sense, people want to be a part of a deal,
Hmm. Hmm.
right? People want to be able to get ahead. If they have the money, if they have the means, right, and the numbers pencil out, there's always people that want to get inside the deal. But I
Hmm.
think, like you said, a lot of people just kind of have sticker shock,
Hmm.
right? They look at that sticker or the number on it, and they kind of just curl up. You know what I mean?
Yeah. So, have you ever watched? I'm big into documentaries, obviously, because that's a big part of what our agency does. Have you ever
Hmm.
seen the docu series of the men who built America?
No, I haven't.
Yeah, you'll have to check it out. It's really cool. It
Okay.
just shows like the history of like how the country is built and like some of the big
Hmm.
entrepreneurs, JP Morgan,
Hmm.
and those types of people. And they were talking about when Henry Ford was building Ford Motor Company. And they're saying, what really took cars to the next level and where it put every yeah, that sliding scale, the tipping point is where then most Americans started getting cars is not necessarily that they made the cars cheaper, although that was part of the process through the assembly line. They say the reason why they were able to skyrocket their sales was they started financing the cars rather than requiring people to pay for it all up front.
Yeah, absolutely.
And I thought that was interesting. And I think that's where a lot of people get stuck in the process of a lot of things, in their own business,
Hmm.
real estate is, so I think there's a whole game and a whole science to that I feel like I'm still learning, honestly, that's why I'm hanging out with Colin over here, asking him all the
Yeah.
questions so he can give me all the tips. So I
Yeah.
don't know if you could,
And it's funny, like when you say that, the financing, right? Because even when you're talking about real estate and mortgages and whatnot, people buy the payment, right? If they can afford the payment, they'll buy the house,
mhm,
right? And over these last couple of years where the interest rate skyrocketed, right? Overnight, it's never grown like that overnight, so fast, so drastically,
mhm,
right? But then a lot of people kind of buried their head in the sand and they were like, well, I have a 3% rate. I'm never refinancing or I'm never going to pull out any money. I don't want to get a new mortgage rate.
mhm,
And it's just like, well, if that's your biggest avenue of uh, your assets, the biggest way to get money,
mhm,
right? I could take you from a 3.5% to a 5% rate, you know, and pay off all those credit cards and pay off everything, right? And save you $300 a month or $500 a month.
mhm.
They don't care about that 25, 28% credit card that they have that they're paying the minimum payment on each and every month, right?
Yeah.
But that between that 3 to 4, they're like, oh my gosh. And, I don't know if it's going to get back down to that 3%. I think there's going to be a reset. There was a run on the banks,
Mhm,
with the Silicon Valley banks and whatnot, where,
mhm.
and a couple years ago, I believe it was in England, where they were 2 hours away from losing all the pensions in the country.
R-
Do you know how
Really?
scary that is?
That's
And it
crazy.
wasn't talked about. You might have saw it might have been talked about one quick little time, but it's like when you watch the news. How what's the percentage of negative to positive? All right.
Yeah, they identified like in the 1960s that they'll get more reaction and more people buying the newspaper for a negative versus positive. So now you fast forward, it's like all negative, right?
Yeah, CNN, the constant negative news site, right?
I've never heard
It's
that. That's
just
awesome.
nothing good. Or there might be like one good little feel good story, but then the rest of the hour is, oh, we're going to shit. You know, Try not to pay attention. It's just it's just draining.
Yeah. So, anyways, wrapping up the podcast, how can people follow you?
Oh yeah, I have a Calendly on Instagram. Colin the Bank is my Instagram page. I have a Calendly if you want to go ahead and set up a call about maybe doing any financing, fix and flips, notes, any kind of thing in the financial money space. And that's calendly.com/funding dash freedom. We're just trying to help people fund their freedoms right there. Right. And yeah, go ahead and reach out. On my Instagram, I say I'm a cool cat, but I'd rather be a dog. So
Nice. I love it. Love it. Okay, brother. Well, hey, it's been good to get to know you. I look forward to everything that we're doing in the future. Make sure you guys go follow him. Really enjoyed this podcast episode today. I think there's a lot of wisdom here. I know you know someone that can benefit from this podcast. Copy the link, text it over to them, tell them why you text it over to them. Okay. All right. Be inspired in what you're doing, build your brand, get your story out. Thanks for joining the podcast. We'll talk soon. Good talk.
Hey, you know you have a story to share with the world, which means you need to get on more life stages. We have a jam-packed schedule in 2024 full of events, including our biggest event year to date, Brand X. Go to benextgen.com/speak. Again, benextgen.com/speak. Or you could just click the link in the description. Fill out an application. Our team will reach out to you and show you how our speaker partnership works. Get on a stage, get video, blow up your brand, blow up your business. Let's go.